Good morning, friends. Today we will start chapter 10, serialization with static fields. So, first of all, static fields are never part of the serialized form because these are not actually the object state. These are purely as class variables. We can treat this as purely as class variables because it's not bound to a particular object state and all. However, we can access those static variables using object that we create. But this is never a form. This is never static variables can never be serialized or deserialized. It's never a part of it because just think about it that if it was serializable and suppose we have got three instances of a serializable class, right, and all of which were serialized at different times. By different time means that each time when we were serializing these three object instances, every time the static variable of the class was different. So it means that this one static variable is shared across the three instances, and when we deserialize it back, so suppose if it was the static variables were able to serialize, then whichever instance we are deserializing it, that will manipulate that static variable, right? It can be different because we are currently loading only those whichever instance wins, that will manipulate that static variable. So you see a problem here. There's a problem here, right? That's why static fields are never part of serialization and deserialization process. So let's try to understand this better in IntelliJ by writing some test cases. So I am in my IntelliJ and let's create a package first. So I will create alt insert package and chapter 10 serialization with static fields. Okay. So this is I create in my source package, and similar I will create an test package. Alt insert package, control V. Okay. Now to save some time, I will copy some previous. I will take chapter 3 mark data with file. Control C, control V, and I will name it as market data with static fields. Okay. So I have got this market data with static fields showing me warning. So because I haven't declared serial version UID, so alt enter, create constant field. So it will generate one field for me. Okay. And now I have to introduce one static variable. So I will call it a static string MD provider. Okay. And let me, always easier to generate this getters and setters and toString method. So it's very easy in IntelliJ. Alt insert getter and setter, control A to select all, and then OK. So we have got this static variable and the setters for this as well. Now also let me create alt insert toString. In toString, I will manually add control D. I will manually add this MD provider field. Okay. Now we are done with our Java Pojo class. Let's create the test class for this. So I'll control C this class name, and I will head back towards test package, alt insert Java class with test. Okay. Now to save some time, again I will copy the test cases from the previous unit test. So again, let's go to chapter 3. It's a very naive implementation of our unit test cases. So I'll copy from here to here, and then I will make the changes required for this chapter. So let me copy first, control C, control V. And okay, so I will change the name of our serialized file to the test class name. Setup is looking good. So here, I mean, in all our previous cases, except the memory buffer test case in chapter 2, we were serializing first and then deserializing it. So these two unit test cases actually mimic two different JVM runs. So once we run this unit test case, it will like mimic like we have done it, and we have run this serialization, and we are able to write it to the serialization file. And then we again run test deserialize. It means that it's another JVM instance which is run, and then it will read this file fresh and get the object state same as it was serialized in the previous run. But to understand the static fields, I will combine this serialize and deserialize unit test cases into one, so that we can mimic the case when there is only one JVM run. There is no alternate JVM run. Because anyways, as we discussed that, if there are two different JVM runs and we set a static field here, something like whatever value, the string value that we put for that static variable, when we retrieve it here, it will always be null. So yeah, so that's already sure, but to better understand it, let's combine these two test cases into one. So what I will do is that I will just change the name of this. So I will do shift F6, test serialize and deserialize. Okay, and enter. So shift F6 is actually refactoring the name of this unit test case. And then I will change here test basic serialization and deserialization for Java with statics. Okay, and let me change the name of this Pojo. So I will mark it as this. Okay, and now I will say market data dot set MD provider. Say as routers. You can see a warning here because we are trying to set a static variable using an object. Always a warning, but it's still allowed. So we set this MD provider and then we write it to a serialized file. Now let me deserialize in the same JVM run. So I've serialized and written this market data object to the file. And we have also set the MD provider as the static field as routers, for example. But as we have learned in our theoretical part that this would not be stored because it's a static variable. So let's assert it. So once I deserialize and read, okay, and let me copy this. Okay, and then we'll make some changes here. So let's deserialize and read. And okay, so should be class not found exception something. So alt enter, add exception to method signature. So as discussed, it was class not found exception, which is thrown by this read object method. And let me again cast it back to the correct chapter 10 Pojo object. Okay, so we have serialized it. Again, we are setting the static field as routers, but this is not going to be serialized. And this is what we are going to assert now. But before I deserialize it, let me again set this static variable to some other value. I will say Bloomberg. Okay. So before we serialize it, we set this static variable as routers. After we serialized it, we again change the static variable as BBG, Bloomberg. And now once we deserialize it, so we will, because it's the same JVM run, we are not having a separate unit test case for deserialization. So it's, or the static variable right now for MD provider should be BBG, because anyway, it was not a part of the serialization process. So we can assert this. I can just copy this previous assert equals, and I expect BBG, because BBG is a static variable for, and okay, so I'll just use get MD provider. Okay. So this is what we expect. So again, let's revise this. Before serialization, we put the MD providers as routers. Again, after serialization, we change it to BBG. And once we deserialize it, because there is no effect for the static field during this process. So it will take the same value which was set at the latest point of time, which is BVG. And again, if I try to, let's again create, after this acceleration, again, let me change it. And I will put something like, say, inet. And again, if I assert it, so I'm still using the same serialized instance, but it is not taking it from its own state. It's taking from the class instance variable. So it should be inet then. So there's no impact here, as you can see, once we confirm this test case. Let me remove this remaining test case. It's not used now. Okay. So let me run this test case now. Just running. Okay. So as we can see, that is correct. Now you can see that before serialization, our MD provider is showing us routers because, let me go here. So because it was set as routers here, during the time it was serialized. Then we set it back to Bloomberg. And then once we deserialized it, the latest static variable value was BBG, and that's why it was shown after serialization. So this is the point here, right? The serialization variable was never a part of the serialization and deserialization process. Whatever the value we set during the JVM, that would be its latest value. Whenever we use a getter, after that, whenever we set this value to a different value, and whenever we try to access that variable, it will always be the latest copy of that variable, not what we have serialized it or deserialized it, because static variables are never part of this process. So guys, this was all about chapter 10, serialization with static fields. In the next video, we'll cover chapter 11, where we will see the cases of object graphs. So see you all in the next video.